The sun was bright that morning, but for Adrian Veyron, one of the city's youngest millionaires, the light felt strangely hollow. He sat in his sleek black car outside the gates of his sprawling estate, his reflection staring back at him in the glass. To the world he was untouchable, a man of power, wealth, and status. But in his chest, a knowing doubt consumed him. He had been with Cassandra, a woman of dazzling beauty and high society connections, for nearly a year. She was the kind of girlfriend everyone expected him to have. Flawless, glamorous, admired at every party. Yet, deep inside, Adrian wasn't sure if she loved him or just the fortune that surrounded him. And so, in a bold and almost reckless act, he devised a test that would change his life forever. He told Cassandra he had been injured in a car accident and could no longer walk. He would use a wheelchair, hide behind the mask of weakness, and watch closely to see her reaction. Would she stand by him through the darkness? Or would her affection vanish without the shine of his wealth and charm? It was a cruel plan, but one he felt desperate to attempt. If you believe in kindness, loyalty, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Corner. Your support helps us spread stories that inspire hearts around the world. The first few days of the experiment were painful. Adrian, dressed in a tailored blue suit, rolled into the grand halls of his mansion with Cassandra by his side. At first, she played her role well. She stroked his hair, assured him that he was still the man she adored, and even posed dramatically for her friends' sympathy on social media. But when the cameras were off, and the pity party ended, cracks began to show. Her laughter turned sharp, her patience wore thin, and she began avoiding him under the pretense of events and commitments. Adrian could feel her love slipping away, replaced by irritation and thinly veiled disgust. In the background of this cruel stage stood another figure, unnoticed by most, but impossible for Adrian to ignore. Her name was Marbelle, a quiet maid who had been working at the mansion for only a few months. She wore a crisp purple uniform with grace and carried herself with a dignity that belied her humble position. While Cassandra rolled her eyes at the sight of Adrian struggling to reach for his glass of water, it was Marbelle who gently placed it into his hands. When Cassandra excused herself from pushing his wheelchair, it was Marbelle who guided him through the gardens, her steps steady, and her silence comforting. Adrian began to see her in a way he had never seen anyone before. She did not look at him with pity nor with admiration for his wealth. She looked at him like he was human, wounded, vulnerable, but still worthy of respect. In those moments, Adrian felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Days turned into weeks, and Cassandra's mask fell completely. She mocked him openly, telling friends he was a shadow of the men he used to be. One evening, as they gathered for a lavish party on the mansion's terrace, she laughed loudly, pointing at him as if he were a cruel joke, while her guests joined in with nervous chuckles. Adrian sat in silence, his chest tight, his face burning with humiliation. But Marbelle, she stood behind his wheelchair, her expression unreadable, her grip steady on the handles. When the laughter rang in his ears like poison, she leaned just slightly closer, her quiet presence shielding him in a way that words never could. For the first time, Adrian realized who truly saw him, who truly cared, and who never needed him to prove anything. That night, long after the party ended and the glittering guests disappeared, Adrian remained awake in his room. He removed the neck brace, placed it on the nightstand, and stared at his reflection once again. He had his answer about Cassandra, but he was left with a bigger question. What was he going to do about Maribel? The next morning, Cassandra arrived with her usual air of superiority, her designer heels clicking on the marble floors. She barely looked at Adrian before announcing she had plans with friends. Adrian, his heart heavy yet strangely free, told her the truth. He stood up from the wheelchair, his body strong and steady, and revealed the cruel trick he had played. Cassandra's face twisted in shock and fury, her glamorous mask crumbling as she realized the game was over. Without hesitation, she stormed out, muttering curses under her breath, her shallow love finally exposed for what it was, nothing. But Maribel, she was different. She gasped softly when Adrian rose from the chair, her hands clutching her apron. For a long moment, she said nothing, simply staring at the men who had pretended to be broken, but who had also been broken inside in ways she understood too well. Adrian expected anger, betrayal, perhaps even scorn. Yet, when Maribel finally spoke, her voice was steady and kind. She told him she had always known something wasn't right. She had noticed the strength in his arms, the steadiness in his legs when he thought no one was watching. But she didn't care about the lie. What mattered to her was the loneliness she saw in his eyes, the pain behind the wealth, and the humanity that money could never hide. For the first time in years, Adrian felt tears sting his eyes. He confessed that his fear of being unloved for who he truly was had driven him to this desperate act. And Maribel, in her quiet way, showed him that love could be simple, selfless, and true. In the weeks that followed, the mansion felt transformed. The party ceased, the shallow laughter faded, and in its place came the sound of birds in the garden, of footsteps on the marble floors that carried purpose instead of vanity. Adrian found himself spending his days not in the company of socialites, but in the gentle presence of Maribel. She told him stories of her childhood, of her struggles, and of her dreams. Dreams she never thought someone like him would care about. But he listened, and more importantly, he cared. Their bond grew in silence and in small gestures. The way she brewed his morning coffee, the way he helped her carry heavy trays despite his wealth, the way they walked together through the rose gardens at dusk. It was not a love born from wealth or power or appearances. It was born from kindness, from respect, and from the quiet miracle of being seen. Months later, Adrian stood once again before his reflection, but this time the man staring back at him was no longer hollow. He was alive, his eyes filled with purpose. And when he turned from the mirror, Maribel was there, her smile soft but radiant. They did not need grand declarations or dramatic gestures. They had something far greater. Trust, honesty, and love that no fortune could ever buy. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Every click helps us spread more stories of hope, kindness, and true love.